Happy 20 years, Harry Potter! I don't like those. Hello everybody, my name is Jenna and today marks 20 years since Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was first published. I am just in awe of the fact that this series has been going on for 20 years. While the main series may be finished, we've got the prequel series with the Fantastic Beasts movie. We ended up with a sequel play of Cursed Child and the series is growing every single day. As a little bit of a celebration for Harry Potter 20, I decided that I wanted to make a video which sort of showcased my timeline of loving the series. I'm not convinced I'm not gonna cry a little bit during this video just because I was kind of crying writing up the timeline, but you know, it's so good, it's so fun, we're all Harry Potter fans here, we all understand. My first experience with Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was on a road trip that I took with my parents and my little sister. As a family, we were driving across the Nullarbor Plain, which is a really flat area in South Australia apparently that I do not remember in the slightest. But this is back before, you know, the invention of laptop, well, there were laptops and stuff, but this is before, you know, you could just pop the kids in the back with a movie. So mum and dad had to find a way to entertain me and my sister. What they decided to do was they decided to go to a bookstore and we picked up just this random book, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and dad would read it to us on the drive. That was the first experience that I ever had with the first book of the series, and honestly, as a family, we loved it and we finished it so fast that we ended up having to buy the second book, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, in order to have a book that would get us back home. When we finally did get home, we bought Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban and dad began by reading us that book. I have a really vivid memory of sitting in my sister's room with him reading it to us, but this is around the time that I really started to fall in love with reading, and I think Harry Potter had a huge part in that. And I decided that I wanted to read my first big girl novel, but my first big girl novel, I wanted it to be Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So I went back to the beginning and started reading those by myself, so dad decided he wasn't going to read us the books anymore because I was going back and doing it for myself. We were pumped for the fact that this book was going to be turned into a movie. One night we were sitting at the dinner table and we were about to eat and we had the TV on and a TV spot for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone came on, and I remember very vividly us all sitting there and listening to Harry yell, "Hermione, no!" or whatever it is he said, and we all just looked at each other and went, "Oh, that's how you say her name." Up until that point we'd been calling her Hermione. Yes, we were one of those people who called her Hermione, and I will never get over that because her name is Hermione and it will always be Hermione. Moving forward to 2002 to 2005-ish, these years all kind of jumbled together because of the releases of the books and the films, and also the fact that I was quite young and I don't really remember a lot from back then, but I have tried to put together kind of a timeline of what I do remember. I remember getting our hands on Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire and really desperately wanting to read it for myself but not being able to because of the sheer size of the book. So as a compromise, my mum and I, we would read one chapter each every single night and we would sort of trade off reading it to each other, and that's the only way that I got through that book because it is so huge for someone so young to be reading. Because when it came out in the year 2000 and I was like 5, so reading it I think I would have been maybe 7 or 8, and that's a big book for a 7 or 8-year-old to try and read. I remember going to see Prisoner of Azkaban at the cinema with my family and some family friends that we had. We had 8 seats but sort of like 4 and 4, so the parents sat behind and the kids sat in front, and I have this really vivid memory of us kids. We were all holding hands, and during the werewolf scene we would squeeze each other's hands if we got scared because we remembered hearing that this movie was a lot scarier than the others, which is so true on so many levels, but it's such a good film that I just don't care. At some point during this timeline, I could not for the life of me tell you when that is. I'm assuming it's at some point in this sort of timeline. Potter Puppet Pals was released with the mysterious ticking noise, and everyone, and I mean everyone, was obsessed with the mysterious ticking noise. I'm pretty sure it came out, you know, it would have come out 2007 I think, because they just did the 10-year reunion of it this year, which is kind of amazing, so I'm sort of jumping around a little bit. But I do remember that once Potter Puppet Pals came out, my friends and I, we actually decided we wanted to make our own Puppet Pals. But we suck, so that didn't really happen. In 2005, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released. As a family, we only bought one copy, which in hindsight was a really stupid thing to do because my mum, my dad and I, we all decided we wanted to read the book at at the same time, but we didn't want to read it together. So for the first maybe 2 weeks of owning that book, it constantly had 3 different bookmarks in it because the 3 of us were at 3 different points in the novel. I was one of the ones who finished last, obviously, because it's such a big book and I was, you know, only a kid, but I remember my parents finishing it and just being kind of like, yep, have fun with that, because of course they knew what was coming at the end of the book. So skipping ahead to 2007. 2007 was a big year because not only was it my final year of primary school, it was also the year that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows was released. The day that Deathly Hallows was released in stores, I remember my mum drove me to the store first thing in the morning. We walked straight in, picked up the book, walked straight out again, and I had finished the first chapter on the drive home. And I remember sitting in my bed, reading it, reading the first death that happens in the book and just crying my eyes out, and my parents came in and they just took one look at me and went, oh dear, this is not going to be pretty. I like to think that I finished it on that day, but I know that I didn't because I remember going to school and during silent reading, because that's a thing that all Australians who go to primary school will know about, silent reading. During silent reading, my teacher actually came up to me and asked me if I was enjoying the book and if it was a good one, because he hadn't yet had a chance to get his hands on it and to read it for himself. And I remember telling him that it was so amazing, it was so good, and that he had to read it as soon as he possibly could. I don't remember where I was or what I was doing when I finished Deathly Hallows, but I remember feeling like it was the end of something. Even though I knew we had more movies to come, the fact that the books were over was just a really big deal, and I still am not really over it, and we're still getting new Harry Potter things, and just the thought that that book ended something is just something really big and really special. So then I got into high school, and in high school I made some incredible friends, all thanks to this series. I ended up with, you know, some very Harry Potter obsessed friends. We would spend many of our lunchtimes sitting down and playing a game we like to think we invented called Harry Potter Heads, which is basically a mixture of heads up and 20 questions just using Harry Potter characters. I remember one lunchtime my friends tricked me really well because the character they chose for me to guess was Harry Potter, and I never actually guessed it. I guessed every other character, but I couldn't guess Harry Potter because I kind of forgot he was a character. We also spent quite a lot of time reading and writing fanfiction. This is gonna be so cringy, but I'm gonna read you guys one of the first ever Harry Potter fanfictions that I wrote. Please don't judge my writing ability on this fanfiction because I wrote it back in 2010 and it's really bad. A lone figure stood at the end of a dimly lit corridor. Her shoulders moved up and down as she tried to calm the tears that were flowing freely from her eyes onto her face, which was pale with fear. She moved her arm slightly and had to bite down on her lip to stop herself from crying out in pain. By the light of the moon, she inspected a large blue and purple bruise on the inside of her forearm. What? Eventually, she would have to go to Madame Pomfrey about it, but not right now. Right now, she needed to be alone with her thoughts. She tried to avoid thinking about what had happened earlier that night. She tried to avoid thinking about him, but she couldn't. She couldn't get the fight out of her head. Her arm gave a painful throb as she thought of how she had hit it against the wall as she stormed away from him in anger and frustration. A noise in the distance brought her back from her thoughts. She whipped around, red hair flying, and hurried down the corridor. Harry Potter was walking the all too familiar route from Dumbledore's office back to the Gryffindor common room when he heard sobs coming from an unlocked classroom. Curious as to whom it was, Harry bent down and looked through the keyhole. In the far corner of the room was someone who had their face hidden. The room was dark and Harry couldn't make out who it was. He backed away from the room and began to walk down the corridor. He heard the door creak open slightly but didn't turn around. He just kept walking as fast as he could, trying to ignore the sobs that still lingered in his ears. Ginny Weasley watched Harry disappear down the corridor through the gap in the door. She knew he had heard the door creak open and wished he had turned and found her. She still loved him after 5 years and wished that she could turn to him for comfort. Breathing deeply, Ginny left the classroom and walked in the direction of the Gryffindor tower. She turned the corridor and was pulled to one side by Harry. "Ginny?" he asked, sounding concerned. She wouldn't look at him. Her eyes closed as his fingers trailed softly over the bruise on her forearm. He didn't say anything, but Ginny knew he was silently asking her for an explanation. In between sobs, she began to tell him what had happened. "Dean and I fought this evening. It started as an argument about him pushing me through the portrait hole, but then he brought you up." Harry's finger halted over her bruise, but she continued to tell him what had happened. He said that no one had any chance with me because— she took a deep breath before continuing, "because I was still in love with you." Ginny took a step back and gazed into his green eyes. "Can't you see that, Harry? Everyone else can. Hermione, Dean, they can both see that I love you. I've never gotten over you. You were the only one I've ever loved, Harry. I couldn't bear for..." She was forced to stop as Harry's lips found hers. His lips were gentle and he kissed her with passion. She ran her fingers through his hair. When they pulled apart, he gazed directly at her. "I love you too, Ginny. I have always loved you and will never stop loving you." Harry cupped her chin with his hand and leaned in for a second kiss. The second was just as gentle as the first. He wanted them to be together more than anything, so he wasn't pushing her. Ginny broke apart from him and put his hand on her chest, letting him feel her steady heartbeat. "My heart has always belonged to you, Harry." She lifted his hand to her cheek, "and it always will." Ginny dropped his hand and began to walk away from him, back to Gryffindor Tower. Harry came up behind her and took her hand into his. Ginny smiled but said nothing. She knew that the time for words would come, but for now just wanted to enjoy this moment, the moment that would be in her mind until the day she died. What a lovely story. Oh man. Well, I like to think I've gotten better at writing since then, but I mean, I don't know. 2009 came around and Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was released in cinemas. My friends and I went and saw it almost as soon as it came out, and I remember coming home and my parents and my sister being like, "You can't tell us anything." So I wrote down my first thoughts of the book, and it just kind of kept going. I can't believe that I still have these, to be perfectly honest, but oh wow, oh my goodness. Okay, let's just have a look at that for a second. Wow, apparently I was a real Tom Felton fan. Oh my god, I have not read through these in so long. Let's just, shall we just read through the highlights here? Can I take this? I do love knitting patterns. Apparently Ginny and Harry's relationship was so cute. Apparently Draco was just like scrap from Ice Age though, because he just kept popping up. You know, I still stand by that. I still stand by that. I'm so glad that the Canaries and Arnold made it into the movie. It's incredible. I was crying when Harry forced Dumbledore to drink the potion. It was so sad. A minute silence, please. The entire Ron Lavender relationship was hilarious, and Quidditch was funny too. Oh, and also when Harry takes the Felix Felicis, that is so funny. And then we get to the that. 2010, Deathly Hallows Part 1 is released in cinemas. My friends and I went to the midnight screening of this film, and I believe it was the first midnight screening I have ever gone to in my entire life, and I wanted to stay awake. So picture this. We're in the cinema. The movie is playing. We get to the end. We'll just all take a minute to remember what's happening to Dobby here. And my friends and everyone else in the cinema were all crying, and it's quiet, and everyone is sobbing, and all of a sudden you hear, I was eating an apple during that scene. An apple! Who does that? Me, apparently! Apparently I eat an apple during the saddest moment of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. That's fine. Now we are always going to remember that as the movie where I ate an apple during the part where someone died. 2010 was also the year that I published on fanfiction.net my Harry Potter story called The Darkness Inside, which is where I included a character called London. She was in the story basically, and I've never finished it. I always had plans to finish it, I never did, which is a little bit sad because I was really proud of that story. 2011, the final film. In the lead up to the final film, our newspaper for the city that I live in was doing kind of an ultimate Harry Potter collection, and I managed to collect every single postcard, every single wand, basically everything that they had for that collection I managed to get, which was awesome, and it's a really cute little collection that I still have to this day. I got my wand for the first time ever. It was from a place called Ollivand's, and it is a beautiful wand that I absolutely love and adore. To celebrate the release of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, my friends and I had a 2-day Harry Potter party. We all dressed up as different characters and we had a competition to see who was the biggest fan. Had the Potter system with rules. There were 2 parts of the competition. The first was Harry Potter heads and the second was Harry Potter seen it. With Harry Potter seen it, I had to go around the board like 2 times to everyone else's 1 because I just knew all the answers. At the party, we played Harry Potter games. We made and ate Harry Potter food, including the Happy Birthday Harry cake, the cauldron cakes, and butterbeer. The butterbeer we made wrong though, and it tasted disgusting. We also watched all 7 films, and then we dressed up to go to the midnight screening of the final movie. The final film was really difficult to watch because everyone was crying, but it was a really well done, beautiful film. I remember sitting in the cinema, and at certain parts of the film, everyone would just burst burst into applause, and it was something really special to be a part of. The end of the film, everyone was crying and everyone clapped, and I'm pretty sure we actually gave it a standing ovation, and my friends and I all raised our wands in the air and said, "Mischief managed." Just realized how much of a nerd this video is making me sound like, but honestly, I don't really care because Harry Potter is such a huge part of my life, and I wanted to share that with you guys today, the day of Harry Potter 20. Also in 2011 was the release of Pottermore, which originally, of course, was that online interactive game sort of thing with the 7 books, which I don't actually think ever made it to the 7 books, but I remember every day after school, I would come home, I would sit on Pottermore, and I would make my potions, and I would do my duels, and I would try and win points for my house. When I first got sorted into Pottermore, I was in Gryffindor house, but after the re-release of Pottermore, I redid my sorting, ended up in a different house, and I think this new house fits me so much better. For a few years, everything was quiet on the Harry Potter front. The movies were done, the books were done, we didn't really know what to do now apart from reread and rewatch all the books and films. Until we got to 2015, where it was announced that there would be illustrated editions coming out once a year for the Harry Potter books. It was the sort of thing that I knew that I immediately needed to have, and I have been collecting them ever since. Also in 2015, I went to London and I went to the Leavesden Harry Potter studio tour. To say I cried during that tour is a little bit of an understatement. I was by myself, which was a little bit sad because it meant I didn't have anyone to share the incredible experience with, but I don't regret going to the studio tour in the slightest because it was so special getting to see all the sets, getting to see all the costumes. I also got to be on a green screen where I kind of was on a broom flying, and I was also in the car, like the Weasley car in front of the train, and it all was just such an incredible experience. And I still remember rounding the corner and seeing the not to scale model of the Harry Potter castle, and that is one of the most special moments of my life because it was basically me seeing my childhood come to life in front of my eyes. In 2016, we had quite a bit of exciting Harry Potter news. Harry Potter and the Cursed Child obviously was released in book form and on stage. I still wish I could have seen it on stage, but I'm happy just having read it in the book form. I went to the release of Cursed Child and actually somehow ended up with 2 copies of it, and I was going to give one away, but then I decided, no, I actually really thoroughly do enjoy this story. I know most people don't, most people hate the play, but personally I am a huge fan of it, so I am really glad that it happened. In 2016, I also participated in the Harry Potter readathon, where I reread all of the books, rewatched all of the films, and I also made a whole bunch of videos relating to the readathon. I believe I did the Harry Potter tag, I sorted myself into Pottermore, I did the Harry Potter spells tag, played Harry Potter heads, I made cauldron cakes, and I believe that was it for the readathon. But this year I also sorted myself into Ilvermorny and I got my Patronus. So all in all, it was a very big year for Harry Potter, and that's not all. In November of 2016, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was released in cinemas. My friends, who I knew from high school, who were my Harry Potter besties, we hadn't seen each other in a while, but we knew we had to go to the midnight screening of this film together. We did, and it was like things hadn't changed. The film was great, and I absolutely cannot wait for the next 4 in the series. Fast forward to 2017, which is of course right now. Harry Potter 20 is today, the 26th of June 2017. I knew as soon as the house editions were released that I needed to get all 4 of them. I did. I thought I would regret it if I didn't get them, but now I won't ever know. I'm sure that in the course of this video I have missed so many important moments that Harry Potter had in my life. I know I haven't even touched on all of the times that I played Lego Harry Potter with my friends, who, by the way, smashed it. I mean, literally, we crushed that game. I know that I haven't mentioned the DS game that my sister and I have that did our heads in every time we tried to play it. I'm sure there's many other Harry Potter moments that I'm forgetting about. But all in all, I just wanted to show just how much this series has been a part of my life since I was such a young child, and the way that it's going to continue to be a part of my life now as I continue to grow and continue to learn. And I just wanted to take this opportunity, I guess, to thank Harry Potter. So happy 20 years, Harry Potter. Here's to a lifetime more. I don't like party poppers, they terrify me.